President Biden is considering commuting the sentences of some offenders who were released to home confinement. Now, the policy is expected to focus on nonviolent drug offenders who have less than 4 years left on their sentence. Well, BNC Chief Legal Correspondent Dr. Laura McNeal joins us live in studio to explain more about these clemency process. So, thank you, of course, for joining us, Dr. Laura. Now, is it really legal for President Biden to use his clemency powers under these circumstances?
You know, it is legal. It hasn't been done often, but we're often, we have to remind ourselves, we're in a pandemic. We're in uncharted territories. And so he can use his clemency powers, and he's considering using it to release prisoners that are on home confinement that have less than 4 years remaining on their sentence. Now, what's important to note is that the typical standard is if an inmate has less than 6 months on their sentence or 10% left. And so Biden's proposal, if he does go through with it for his clemency program, would let prisoners out, again, that are on home confinement considerably earlier. 4 years left on their sentence is a big difference from 6 months.
So can you tell us a little bit more about the legal standard about passionate release?
Yes, and so a lot of people don't know this. There is a compassionate release law, and it allows judges to decide if prisoners should be released because typically for things like terminal illness, advanced age. And so another option that the Biden administration is considering if they do not do the clemency program is to use this compassionate release law. And there's a lot of discretion that judges are given to decide, whether or not the extenuating circumstances, which in this case would be COVID-19, does it apply to someone who is, say, 85 years old, underlying health conditions, living in a crowded prison population that is in jail for a nonviolent offense that no longer presents a significant threat to society. So that's another option to address, what do we do with all of the prisoners, there are thousands, that were released to home confinement in an effort to uncrowd the jails during the pandemic.
So, okay, in your opinion, especially under this current political climate, how likely is it that Biden will actually use his clemency power to help out these people that are in home confinement?
Very controversial. I'm actually on the fence on this one. I think there is a lot of political pressure, as you can imagine, not to do so. A lot of people are concerned about public safety and other things. But I think that for Biden, the fact that he is focusing on, again, drug offenders that are nonviolent might help him out. If I had to take a guess, Shannon, I think he will go ahead and use his clemency powers to do this.
But you did mention public safety, so what does this look like? Does he just says everyone free for all, you're free, or is it things like they roll it out? How does it work exactly?
Yeah, so
also will they still be like on some type of probation, or is it just you're good?
You got a free ticket, right?
Yeah.
As they say out of jail as kids. No, so essentially he's only, if he does use his clemency powers, based on the proposal they're thinking about now, he's only considering those, again, drug offenders only. So if you committed homicide, meaning murder, kidnapping, more violent crimes are not under consideration for his clemency. But if you're a drug offender and it's a non-violent crime that you committed, like possession of drugs, and again, 4 years or less, he's going to release you if he decides to use those clemency powers. So it's important for people to remember these aren't people that are posing a threat to society. We know that a lot of times, we forget what the purpose of our criminal justice system is. Ideally, yes, we want people to be punished for crimes, but we also want them to be able to rehabilitate themselves and re-enter into our communities and not have issues of recidivism where people end up back in jail. And so if you've been at all this time on home confinement during the pandemic and there's no infractions, no breaking of, you haven't broke the law in any way, I think you should be released, to be quite frank. And it does impact a lot of people in our communities, in brown and black communities that are in jail for having a drug addiction, for simply possessing drugs when they really should have been sent to some type of rehab or treatment center.
So do you think there's any possibility that those, especially if it was for a marijuana possession, for example, and they're in a state where it is legal, will those charges be dropped and expunged of their record, or will it be one of those things that stays on their record?
Yeah, so that's actually kind of a separate issue in terms of those state marijuana laws, Shannon. So that's state specific, so there's not really a broad sweeping answer to that because technically it is still outlawed by the federal government, and what Biden is considering would be for federal inmates and not state inmates.
Okay, darn, just looking out for my cousin Buki. I'm trying here, I'm trying. All right, thank you so much, Dr. Laura.
Thank you.